Though I walk in the midst of trouble, you will revive me. You will stretch out your hand against the wrath of my enemies, and your right hand will save me. The Lord will perfect that which concerns me. Your mercy, O Lord, endures forever. Do not forsake the words of my hands. Amen. And the next person you will hear is my sister. And the title of the sermon is Changes. You have a mic?
Good morning. Happy Sabbath, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Brian and I were talking and we were wondering when the last time was that Mother was here with her 3 kids in church. And we couldn't think of a time. And it might be a long time for the next one. So this is pretty neat for us. So thank you, family, for being here. Thank you, friends, for being here. Thank you, Browns Mills, for being here. It's lovely to see you all. And thank you, Joe, for inviting me back again. I realize that my messages to you have all been very story and very fun and very easy. And I kind of like fun and easy. So I'm more of a teacher, not a preacher. So we're not going to get too deep. Hopefully you can get deep on your own when you investigate this story a little further, if you'd like. But the title of the message is Changes. Now, how many of you cannot stand changes? Oh, there's a bunch of you. Oh, nice. Things have to be the same way as they've always been, and that makes you comfortable, right? But changes happen in life all the time, right? In your family, you could have a marriage, you can have a baby, you can have kids switching schools, you can have kids graduating high school and going to college or finding a profession. You can have a change in your job, even a change of a boss or change of coworkers can really bring some change in your life. Here at Browns Mills, you guys just got a new pastor in the spring, correct? That's a big change. Nominating committee is coming up. There could be some big changes coming up. Our life is full of changes. And changes for most come with some struggles and some trials. The big change going on in our life is that we are moving. My husband and I are moving to Arizona. It's a very quick process. We're actually starting our drive out on this Friday. So it's really, really quick. And that's brought a lot of changes in our life and a lot of chaos, which changes sometimes bring chaos. There are changes, though, that are kind of easy and positive for us, and there are changes that are hard. And I think one of the hardest changes would be a change in habits. When you recognize that you have a habit that is not complementary or not beneficial to anything, and you recognize that in yourself and you say, I'm going to make a change and I'm going to change my habit, it's very difficult. But I think one farther more difficult than that would be noticing something of your character that is flawed, because that means you have to look at self and you have to think, oh, I've got to change my way of thinking, my actions, my words. And that's harder because that is a continuous plan to change yourself. And that's very, very hard. And so today our message is going to be about a Bible story. And before we go, I'd like to get your feedback on your favorite Bible character or Bible story. Now, if your favorite character is any one of the Trinity, I want you to pick your second favorite character. But if your favorite story has to do with Jesus, the feeding of the 5,000 or the woman at the well, then I would love to share. David. All right. King David. Anyone else over here? Carol. Daniel. The message I was going to give today was about Daniel. A whole lot of things about Daniel. Nice. Yes. That's wonderful. When you can read something again for the how manyth time and be like, what? Has this always been in here? I don't believe it. Anyone else over here? Joshua. Yeah, very nice. Be strong and courageous. Anyone else on this side? Favorite Bible character or story? All right, I'm going to go back here to these kids. I hear some answers. Yes, young man. Joseph, which Joseph? I know a couple. All of them. Thanks, brother. That was helpful. What's yours? Noah. You like that big ark. Favorite story, favorite character? Esther. All right. Getting a lady in the mix. Love it. Thank you. Shall, do you have one? Deborah. Yes, the judge. Very good. Brian, who's yours? Oh, yeah. That's all right. Add a little twist in there. Mom, what's your favorite character story?
He's Joseph, son of Jacob.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Well, today we're going to be talking about my favorite story, which is Joseph, son of Jacob. So get your Bibles, open them up to Genesis 37. That's where we're going to start the story. This is a familiar story. Most everybody knows Joseph and his coat. That's what I was thinking. Coat. Mom said 11 brothers. That's good. There's lots of answers that could follow that. But I was, so we're going to be talking about Joseph. I have 3 books of references here. Of course, the Holy Word is one. I've got a Bible commentary. And then I have patriarchs and prophets that we're going to be looking from. So we're going to have a little bit of a Bible study. But I think everybody knows this story pretty well. And if you don't, maybe it'll get you excited to go ahead and read some. So I'm going to ask you some questions. You can certainly refer to the notes, like we're in school. Look at your notes. Mom has already said that Joseph's father was Jacob. Holler out answers. Who was his mother? This is R. Rachel. Rachel was his mother. Jacob has a new name given to him. What was Jacob's new name? Israel. Very good. Of the 12 brothers, what number? What number is Joseph? 11. This side's all right. Come on, side. You need to pick it up. I'm going to stand over here. And this family dynamic is really crazy. Jacob is the father, and there's 12 kids. How many mothers are there? 4, Carol says. There's 4. That's going to cause some trouble. There's 3 in my family. And I don't think we're really jealous of one another, envious, but if we had different parents, different mothers, there's definitely going to be different groups that form, almost clique-like. And this happens with Joseph's brothers. The oldest 4 are together, and then there's another 4 in the middle, and then there's 1, and then there's Joseph and his youngest brother, Benjamin. Brian was trying to get that answer out. So, when we first meet Joseph in this chapter of 37, how old is Joseph? I thought I heard it. 17. So he's wise. He knows it all, right? He's not going to make any mistakes. He's a 17-year-old. He's got it. He knows what he's doing. Every decision he makes is going to be good, right? No, he's a silly child, right? He's going to make some mistakes. What would be some names, nicknames, titles that you would give Joseph in this part of the story when he's 17 years old? Dreamer. That's not a bad nickname, right? Anyone else have another nickname that Joseph might have been given? What is it? Rose? No, not quite. I've never heard that one. Perhaps, but I haven't heard it. Tattletale. That's totally the answer I wanted to hear. What do you think when you hear my favorite character? You're calling him a tattletale. Does anyone else, have you heard this about Joseph, that he's a tattletale? Yes. Do you believe that? No. Thanks. I don't either. I don't believe it either. And this is what it says in in Patriarchs and Prophets about Joseph. Here we go. As Joseph witnessed the evil conduct of his brothers, he was greatly troubled. He ventured gently to talk with them, but this only aroused further hatred and resentment. He could not endure to see them sinning against God, and he laid the matter before his father, hoping that his authority might lead them to reform. Joseph was not tattling to get his brothers in trouble. It wasn't like a, Mom, Dad, this is what he's doing. It wasn't like that. He saw the brothers doing something that was wrong against God. And he tried to talk with them to say, look, this is not good in God's eyes. And the brothers were like, whatever. So then he went to his father to say, Father, the brothers are doing something wrong and they really need to change because it's not good. So Joseph did it out of the kindness and love of his heart and because it was something against God that was wrong. It wasn't necessarily to be tattletale, but he did tell on him. So I don't want to, he did tell, and it seems like he told often. The Bible only has a couple of instances, maybe even only one instance, but we do know that this was a recurring thing. But when your younger sibling tells on you, how does it go? Phil, how does it go? That's the older brother. It doesn't go well. I mean, does any of us like being told you've done this wrong or you're not doing this right? Nobody likes it, and certainly not from somebody who's younger, way younger, number 11 in the ranks of the brothers. And so the Bible says in chapter 37, verse 4, that the brothers hated him. Now, it is mean, and we use the word hate in today's world very easy. Oh, I hate broccoli, or I hate driving downtown, or whatever it is. We use it so very casually. This hated means that the brothers really hated him. And it goes on to say that they could not speak a kind word. Now, perhaps you've at work had a coworker that you just didn't get along, but you've been able to find a kind word, right? You've been able to be, a little bit of a pacifist and be kind. But here the brothers could not say a kind word to him. And then the dreamer comes out. Then Joseph has these dreams. He has a couple of dreams and he shares them with his brothers. And these dreams were all about him being higher and above them. And the brothers don't like it at all. And they hate him more and they hate him more. All they can do is hate this one. Now the father has no idea that the brothers hate him so. Otherwise, he would have never sent him on that mission. Never had a clue that this is how bad it was. And then there's something else that we only talked about at the beginning. Another thing that was so over the top that the brothers are like, all right, we got to put a stop to this. What was it? That beautiful coat. That coat of many colors when we're kids and we color that colorful coat in Sabbath school class, that coat. Well, the Bible commentary says that this coat was not a working man's coat. This is not something you put on and you go rake the leaves in. This is a fancy coat. It goes down to the wrists. It goes down to the ankles. It's colored. It's ornamented. It's a special coat. And this coat to the brothers signifies that this is the number one son, the birthright. Everything we're working for is going to him. Scholars also believe that this coat was given to Joseph more than once, almost like Hannah would bring Samuel a coat every year. So perhaps when he was younger and the brothers would understand that the relationship with the mother was stronger, they're like, okay, Dad, he can be the favorite. He's the youngest or he's one of the younger ones and that's okay. But now at 17, can't do this anymore. Now he's an adult. He should be doing as much work as we're doing, and we got to put a stop to this. So the brothers hate Joseph, the top 10. And one day, Joseph's brothers are out tending their flocks, and word has not come back to Dad that things are okay, so Dad sends Joseph off to go see what's going on. This is not uncommon. David did the same thing. David was sent to go check out for his brothers when Goliath came. Yeah, nobody likes being, and they know that there's going to be some bad news that comes with little tattletale Joseph that comes around. So he goes out to look for his brothers just by himself. Just when Joseph goes out, and he goes to Shechem. Now, Bible scholars will know that Shechem is not a good place. Shechem is a place where two of the brothers killed everyone in the entire city. So when dad hears that they are in this near this town of Shechem, dad's like, oh, maybe now is when they're going to get their vengeance. I don't feel comfortable at all about my kids being in this area. Joseph, go find them and let me know that they're okay. Joseph makes his way to Shechem, and it's not a quick trip. It's like 50 miles that he's walking with provisions on his back, spending the night trying to find his brothers. And when he finally gets to Shechem, he doesn't see them. They're not in the pastures, they're not in the fields. There happens to be a guy there. And he's like, hey guy, have you seen my brothers? They're around here with a whole bunch of sheep. And he's like, oh yeah, they went over here to this town called Dothan. Dothan is 15 miles away. Joseph is excited though, when he finally gets to Dothan and he sees his brothers. He is happy. If you can imagine it, the brothers are over here resting with their sheep, and here comes Joseph, one person from afar. How do the brothers know that that is Joseph? That coat stirs them into a frenzy, and they actually plot to kill him. That's how far this hatred goes. That's not like, let me just give him a black eye and put his arm back or anything. That's not normal older brother behavior. They actually want to kill him. Joseph comes on unsuspicious of danger and glad that the object of his long search was accomplished. He's happy to see his brothers. Yay, here are my brothers. Now guess what? I can get a report and I can go home, and guess who's going to feel happy? Dad. I'm halfway done, is what he's feeling. But instead of the expected happy greeting from his brothers, he was terrified by the angry and revengeful glances which he met. He was seized by his coat, and it was stripped of him. Taunts and threats revealed a deadly purpose. Joseph feared for his life. He's happy to find his brothers, and all of a sudden he's worried that he is going to be killed because the brothers wanted to kill. But there was one brother who said, wait a minute, we can't, that's maybe crossing the line, guys. We can't have our hands have his blood on our hands. That's too much. So he said, let's just throw him in this pit, which is not a better situation, right? Yikes. And which brother was that who said that? Reuben. Did you know that? All right. Nice. Reuben is the oldest. He has a little bit of a fatherly feeling over his brothers. And he says, we can't do this. But secretly, Phil, what was Reuben trying to do? He was trying to buy time because he needed to soothe his brothers in some way and sneak Joseph up out of that pit. The brothers didn't know this. But Reuben actually, once he convinces his brothers, don't kill him, just throw him in the pit, Reuben leaves the scene. So Reuben is not there when Joseph comes and he's thrown into that pit. Now imagine Joseph in the pit. What's he doing? What's he saying? What's going on in that pit? What do you think? He's got to be crying. He's got to be calling out, brothers, what are you doing? Brothers, help me. Brothers, I'm hungry. Brothers, I have a job to do. Brothers, what did I do wrong? And the brothers, what are they doing? They're sitting down to eat. Joseph probably has gone through his provisions. He's probably hungry. Anything he has is probably in the pockets of that coat. And his brothers are sitting down to eat. But as the brothers are eating, it's not as good as they thought it would be. You ever have a plan in your head and you think, oh, it's going to go like this. And then when you're there, you're like, this is not at all what I was thinking. So the brothers are sitting down and they should be feeling happy because now this pesky brother who is going to take over is out of the picture. But they're not feeling that way. It says here, some of them were ill at ease. They did not feel the satisfaction that they had anticipated from their revenge. And soon a company of travelers was seen approaching. And Joseph was pulled up out of the pit. Joseph doesn't know that there's merchants coming by. Joseph has no idea. Joseph gets pulled up out of the pit and he's like, oh, thanks, brothers. Boy, you really scared me there. And then he sees the travelers and he sees what's going to happen. And how is Joseph feeling? Oh, this change, these poor changes that Joseph is going through, from being the best favored son to being thrown in a pit, almost left for dead, to now being sold into this caravan as a slave. It says here, as he saw the merchants, the dreadful truth flashed upon him. To become a slave was a fate more feared than death. Given the choice, if you were to ask Joseph at that time, send me with the slave traders or put me back in the pit, he might have very well said, put me back in the pit. And some of the brothers were moved with pity because Joseph is pleading to each one, don't let me do this. Save me, help me, help me. And some of the brothers are feeling, we can't do this, but they've crossed the line. There's no way they can go back, because certainly Joseph is going to tell dad of what happened, and those consequences are going to be too much. So Joseph is bound and he's taken down to Egypt, where he's going to be sold as a slave, as a 17-year-old pampered young adult child. He's got some changes he needs to make. Spirit of prophecy says that while he is chained on the way down to Egypt, he can actually see the hills where his father's tents are. Ouch. To know that father and him are the closest, and to know that dad is going to be ripped apart when I'm not coming back is almost too much for Joseph to bear. So Joseph's first tears are for his father. Then he spends some time thinking about his own lot in life. And then he's a little bit worried about himself. But fortunately, this doesn't last too long, because eventually, while he's still on that trip to Egypt, he thinks of God. He says, in the providence of God, even this experience was to be a blessing to him. He had learned in a few hours that which years what might not otherwise have taught him. His father, strong and tender as his love had done him a wrong by his partiality and indulgence. This unwise preference had angered his brothers and provoked them to the cruel deed that had separated from his home. But his thoughts returned to his father's God, and he decided right then and there, I'm going to be faithful to God no matter what. So Joseph, in those few hours, was able to change into a man who was saying, I'm going to do absolutely everything I can and glorify and honor God no matter what I do in any situation. Fast forwarding through the story, he goes with Potiphar. Potiphar's title is, anybody remember Potiphar's title? Captain of the guard. And I always thought that meant like top general, like 5-star, oak leaves, whatever it is. But it actually, scholars say, he is the chief executioner. So you don't want to mess up in this guy's house. And Joseph doesn't mess up. He is in the service of Potiphar for 10 years. Scholars think that Potiphar was a eunuch, and in time, Joseph earned his way up, and Potiphar and Joseph were like father and son, until one day something happened that made put Potiphar in a really rough position to believe the wife or to believe this almost adopted son. And he had to take the side of his wife, and Joseph was thrown into prison. But remember his profession. Potiphar was chief executioner. If he would have had any kind of belief that Joseph did what he was accused of, he would have been however they execute in Egypt at the time. I don't know what it was, but it would have been that. And so here Joseph went from changes to being a lowly slave to now 27 years old, being almost number 2 in the household. And now he's in jail. He's going through all these changes. So now he's in jail. And the book of Psalms says that his hands were bound and his head was bruised. So this was not an easy trip going to this prison. And he starts at the bottom again, but then in time he works his way up, and now he's number 2 to the warden. Like all these things that Joseph is, he's going through these crazy extreme changes. And the reason that he is able to be so strong is because he decided right when he was taken from his brothers that he was going to be faithful to God in all that he did. And before long, he is pulled out of prison for interpreting some dreams. He spent about 3 years in prison. And then all of a sudden, he's standing before Pharaoh, the king of the land. And now he's given rank number 2 of all of Egypt. Again, he's just on this yo-yo of changes, of highs and lows in his life. And he's able to get to this position because he interprets a dream from Pharaoh, who says there's going to be 7 years of famine, and then there's going to be 7 years of flip that around. We're going to have some good years, and then we're going to have some crazy lean years. And then the good years come, and he saves all this grain, and then the bad years come, and we're into year 2 of our 7 year of bad times. And Joseph's up here doing his thing, calling people in and giving them, trading for money or selling and whatever. And all of a sudden, his 10 brothers come in. And Joseph recognizes them on the spot. And they have no idea who Joseph is because they believe in their hearts what happened to Joseph. He's dead. He's gone. And they come to Joseph, and Joseph tests them to see if they're still those awful brothers that he knew the last time he'd seen them 27 years ago, 29 years ago, 30 years ago. And he puts them through all these tests. And they actually pass these tests. They prove that they have been changed men. They prove that they are not jealous or vindictive or have thoughts of murder on their mind through all of these situations that Joseph challenges them with. They come out on top. But they're still not happy, because once they finally leave, they get their grain and they go home, they tell Dad, guess what? We have to go back and we have to bring Benjamin, the baby brother, your favorite, who's replaced Joseph as number 1. We have to bring him back. And Dad's like, no way, not going to happen, because that's my baby. That's not going to happen. But eventually they run out of food and they have to go back. And all these changes that we've been thinking about with Joseph, don't forget that the brothers are going through some changes. The brothers go through a big character change, because this is what it says in Genesis. We're moving ahead. Genesis 43, verse 15. Genesis 43, verse 15. So the brothers are back to Egypt for their second time to go get grain so that their families can live and not perish of starvation. And it says in 15, so the men took the gifts and a double amount of silver, and Benjamin also. They hurried down to Egypt and presented themselves to Joseph. Now, if you are these brothers, and this story happened when Joseph was 17, I bet these brothers would find a way to get that grain without having to go see Joseph. They would have found people who were on their way and said, I'll give you extra money if you go get extra grain for me. They could have changed their clothes and their attire. They could have acted like they didn't know the language. They could have done all sorts of things to show we are not changed men. But they went to Joseph with their brother in all honesty. Their characters had indeed been changed by their actions, that they did not try any kind of deceit, no trickery. They just went in all honesty, because come on, tell me, be honest. If you think your siblings or child's life is in danger and you have to go report to a certain person, and if you're afraid that person will take your life, aren't you looking for any other way around that situation? Aren't you trying to find, oh, maybe if we do this, or maybe let me go this way, something like that? I think so. And so that verse right there, they hurried down to Egypt and presented themselves to Joseph, shows me that there is a change of character in these young men. And it had been 30 years. So changing character might take 30 years. Hopefully it's not as long as that, but their character was changed. But there is another change that's going to take place that isn't going to be that hard. and it's not going to be that long. So turn to 1 Corinthians 15. 1 Corinthians 15, verse 52. 1 Corinthians 15, 52 says, in a flash, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet, for the trump will sound and the dead will be raised imperishable, and we will all be changed. And that's the change I want to leave with you today. That change in a twinkling of an eye, when we will be changed to incorruptible. That's what I want you to remember. So I thank you for your time, and I ask that God be with you as you go through the many changes that you will continue to go through in your life, and that our changes will be beneficial for ourselves, for our Father, and for our family. Amen. Our closing song is 122, Hark the Herald Angels Sing. You can come up, Rex.